When you tune in to watch a world-class sports team,
Hmm.
there is this baseline expectation of just a masterclass.
Oh, absolutely. You expect them to just perform.
Right. Like, you are watching a team packed with superstars. You expect a symphony. You expect precision.
Yeah, absolute fluidity.
Exactly. But then occasionally, you turn on the screen, and instead of a symphony, you get an orchestra where half the instruments are just playing totally out of tune.
It's painful to watch.
It really is.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what happened to Team India recently. So today, welcome to the deep dive. We are doing a clinical autopsy on 2 consecutive international series defeats to find out why a team of undisputed heavyweights suddenly, forgot how to play their own game.
Yeah, it is entirely jarring to witness. I mean, we are so conditioned to see these elite athletes operate with absolute perfection that when the system breaks down, it leaves everyone in a state of shock.
You find yourself wondering if you're even watching the same sport.
You really do. 2 consecutive series defeats on the international stage is not just a statistical blip. It is a massive flashing warning light on the dashboard.
For sure.
When a team with this much raw talent, and let's be honest, financial backing,
Yeah.
drops back-to-back series, it demands a serious, unvarnished look at the mechanics of those failures.
Okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah.
Because the core debate jumping out of the breakdown of these matches is fascinating. Like, are these losses simply a matter of individual player failures?
Yeah.
You guys just having a bad day at the office? Or is there a deeper systemic problem here?
Right.
Are we looking at fundamental cracks in selection, overarching strategy, and, well, the collective mindset of the entire squad?
In high-stakes sports, and frankly in any high-performing organization, surface-level mistakes are usually just symptoms of deeper structural cracks.
Mm-hmm.
Today, we are going deep into a factual, step-by-step breakdown of exactly where these matches slipped away. We are going to look at the underlying mechanisms.
Because these defeats weren't just random anomalies.
Exactly. They followed a very specific, identifiable, and ultimately fatal pattern.
And to really grasp that pattern, we have to start where the tempo of a cricket match is invariably set. We have to start at the crease with the batting lineup.
That is where the autopsy has to begin.
Yeah, because looking at the data across these series, there is a glaring, catastrophic failure at the top. The top order, the batters who are supposed to be the vanguard, the tone setters, were completely dismantled under pressure.
The numbers from these 2 series show a complete inability to assert dominance early on. I mean, the top order didn't just fail, they were paralyzed.
Wow, paralyzed.
Yeah, they completely failed to exploit the field restrictions in the first 6 overs. Instead of putting the opposing bowlers on the back foot, they were entirely reactive.
Just continuously beaten by the swing and seam movement, right?
Exactly. And because they couldn't survive that initial burst, let alone score freely, the foundation of the innings was completely gutted.
It totally rewrites the script for the rest of the team. I think of the middle order batters in this scenario like a co-pilot who has to take over the controls of an airplane that is already in a steep nosedive.
That is a terrifying but accurate analogy.
Right. They aren't flying to a destination anymore. They are just desperately pulling back on the yoke to avoid crashing into the side of a mountain. But let me push back a bit here, or rather, ask you to dig deeper.
Sure, go ahead.
If the top order is supposed to be the most reliable, like the most technically gifted part of the lineup, doesn't their failure under pressure point to a mindset issue rather than a skill issue? I mean, we know they have the physical ability to hit through the line of the ball.
What's fascinating here is how the mathematics of the game directly impact the psychology of the players. It is rarely a sudden evaporation of physical skill.
Okay, so what is it then?
It is about how early pressure fundamentally shrinks a player's decision-making window. When the top order fails against the new ball, they aren't just failing to add runs to the board, they are absorbing none of the opposition's momentum.
Right, they are leaving all the pressure out there.
Exactly. By getting out early and cheaply, they mathematically and psychologically box the middle order into an impossible corner.
Because the required run race is already climbing, and the field is spreading out, which, completely alters the risk profile of every single shot.
That changes the entire geometry of the field for a new batter. Imagine you are walking in at number 5. You are visualizing coming into the game with a solid platform, say, a healthy run rate, and the opposition captain scratching his head for answers.
That's the dream scenario.
Right. Your job is just to find the gaps, rotate the strike, and eventually accelerate. But instead, you are walking out to the middle, the score is dismal, the ball is still moving, and the opposition is surging with adrenaline.
It's a nightmare.
Building a partnership requires a delicate balance of strike rotation and calculated boundary hitting. But when you are 3 wickets down for nothing, you are strictly in survival mode.
You are playing not to lose, rather than playing to win. Which means, like, you let the bad balls go unpunished because the fear of losing another wicket totally outweighs the reward of a boundary.
And that paralysis is fatal in modern cricket. A partnership requires a mutual understanding between two batters to take those calculated risks and, transfer pressure back onto the bowler.
But if you are in survival mode,
You defend balls, you should attack. The run rate slows to a crawl, the pressure mounts exponentially with every single dot ball, and eventually that suffocating pressure forces a catastrophic error.
like a desperate hoik across the line.
Or a suicidal run out. Yeah.
Yeah.
The failure of the top order essentially dictates the psychological state of the entire innings.
It's a cascade of panic.
Mhm.
And that panic doesn't just stop with the batters trudging back to the pavilion. Because when you have a severe lack of runs on the board, it immediately shifts a massive, often unbearable burden onto the bowling and fielding unit.
Oh, absolutely.
You are basically asking them to defend a puddle of water in the middle of the desert. Which brings us to the second major area of concern we need to unpack: the defensive leaks.
The margin for error just vanishes entirely. If the batters haven't given the bowlers a sufficient total to defend, every single wide, every single misfield is magnified tenfold.
The breakdown of the defensive strategy in these series was alarming. Like, the bowlers leaked a staggering number of runs in the back end of the innings. And compounding this, the fielding standard fell well below the international baseline.
It was really tough to watch.
We are talking about crucial, momentum-shifting dropped catches in the deep.
The final overs of an innings are the ultimate crucible. As a bowler, you need absolute clarity of thought and, perfect biomechanical execution.
Right.
You're usually attempting to hit the base of the stumps or execute a deceptive, slower ball, all while a batter is literally trying to hit you out of the stadium.
No pressure.
Exactly. But the execution from India's bowlers in this phase was highly erratic. They missed their lengths, offered up full tosses, and were just mercilessly punished.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because you combine that erratic bowling with the poor overall fielding standard we saw. Now, I have always believed that a dropped catch in a high-stakes moment is often a physical manifestation of mental panic.
Yes, 100%.
It's like your brain is processing 100 different disastrous scenarios about losing the series, and the cortisol spikes so high that you literally lose your hand-eye coordination. But I want to challenge you on this.
Bring it on.
Are dropped catches and bad execution at the end of an innings just bad luck on the day? The ball was wet from the dew, the stadium lights were in their eyes. Or is it a sign that the team's overall fielding standard has genuinely dropped?
That physical manifestation of panic is the exact physiological mechanism at play here. No, it is not just bad luck with the lights or the dew.
So it's systemic.
Yes. In elite sports, poor fielding standards aren't accidents. They reflect the team's current baseline under contextual pressure. When the batting has already failed, the bowlers and fielders are carrying the weight of the entire match. They are gripping too tight.
Wait, you mean their muscles are literally tensed up before the ball is even bowled?
Functionally, yes. A fast bowler who knows he only has a tiny fragile total to defend will grip the seam slightly tighter. His run-up might be slightly more rigid, his stride length altered by a fraction of an inch due to anxiety.
Just from overthinking it.
Exactly. And that tiny biomechanical shift alters his release point. What was supposed to be a pinpoint delivery at the toes becomes a waist-high full toss, which gets dispatched into the stands.
Oh, wow.
And for the fielders, the effect is even more pronounced. True fielding brilliance, those spectacular diving catches, comes from a state of flow. It requires relaxed anticipation and soft hands.
But when you are terrified of making a mistake because your team is already backed into a corner, your peripheral vision narrows. You snatch at the ball instead of letting it into your hands.
The physiology of stress slows your reaction time by milliseconds. And in international cricket, milliseconds are the difference between a game-winning catch and the ball bursting through your fingers and rolling away to the boundary.
Man, that's brutal.
Those dropped catches were the ultimate symptom of a team operating under a thick cloud of anxiety. The closing overs are the ultimate test of nerve, and the Indian team simply blinked.
Yeah.
Their baseline standard of execution degraded because the contextual pressure of the game, which was entirely manufactured by that initial batting failure, completely overwhelmed their natural skills.
So we have the pilot taking over the nosediving plane during the batting collapse. Then we have the defensive leaks, where the pressure causes the steering and the brakes to fail in the field.
That's one way to put it.
If both the batting and the bowling and fielding units broke down so comprehensively, it feels like we can't just isolate this to the 11 guys on the grass anymore. The problem moves up the chain of command. It moves up to the strategy room.
This brings us to the most critical part of the diagnosis, the brain trust, the overarching strategy, the selection committee, and the leadership group.
Right.
We have to ruthlessly scrutinize the makeup of the playing 11. Did they pick the right team for the actual conditions on the ground? Were there other players sitting on the bench carrying drinks who possessed the specific tools needed for these pitches?
The strategic contrast with how England performed across these matches is glaring. Like, England exhibited vastly superior planning. They read the local conditions perfectly and handled those high-pressure situations with just a chilling level of calm.
That contrast is the smoking gun of this entire analysis. When you have two teams competing at the highest level and one looks completely frantic and disorganized while the other is executing a clinical step-by-step game plan well, it points directly to the preparation phase.
Yeah, that makes sense.
England didn't just happen to play better cricket, they planned a better game of cricket.
But wait, let me push back here. The captain and the head coach aren't out there dropping those catches in the deep. They aren't the ones facing a swinging new ball at 90 miles per hour and failing to get it out of the inner circle.
True.
How much of this is actually a management failure versus the players just being outplayed on the day by a better, maybe more informed English side? Aren't we letting the players off the hook by blaming the guys in the suits and tracksuits sitting up on the balcony?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, management's job is not to hit the ball or take the catch. Management's primary function is to read the environment, understand the specific variables of the day, and select the right tactical framework.
Okay.
The players are the executors of that framework. If management sends a team out onto a pitch that is heavily assisting spin, but they've packed the lineup with fast bowlers and left their best players of spin bowling on the bench, they have fundamentally misread the exam paper.
Wow. Yeah.
The failure isn't just on the player for struggling, it is a profound selection failure.
Okay, that makes sense. You have to arm your players with the right strategy.
Yeah.
So how did England's management get it so right while India's got it so wrong in these specific series?
Look at England's highly analytical use of local conditions. Cricket is a game deeply, almost uniquely influenced by its environment.
Because of the pitch, right?
Yes, the moisture in the pitch, the cloud cover overhead, the abrasiveness of the soil, these dictate how the game must be played. England's brain trust analyzed these conditions and formulated a highly specific plan.
And what was that plan?
Well, when they realized the pitch was holding up and too paced, they utilized slower ball bouncers and off-cutters into the surface, making it incredibly difficult for the Indian batters to generate power.
While India's fast bowlers stubbornly kept trying to blast through a sheer pace,
Yeah.
Bowling traditional lengths that just sat up nicely for the English batters to hit.
Exactly the tactical divergence we are talking about. Furthermore, it raises serious questions about India's bench strength, or rather their refusal to use it.
The bench.
Right. There were players sitting on the sidelines who specialize in exactly the kind of gritty, condition-specific cricket these series demanded. This implies that India's management was highly rigid.
They just stuck to their guns no matter what.
They seemingly stuck with out-of-form marquee superstars instead of selecting hungry, condition-appropriate players from their reserves. Utilizing your squad isn't just about resting tired players. It is about tactical flexibility.
Right.
England adapted to the ground they were standing on. India stubbornly stuck to a preconceived plan that was visibly falling apart.
And that strategic rigidity cascades right back down to the players, doesn't it? If the game plan feels wrong for the conditions, the players out in the middle know it immediately.
Oh, they definitely know it.
They can feel it not working. That realization adds to the anxiety.
Yeah.
That adds to the pressure that causes the tight grip on the ball, the frantic batting, and the dropped catches.
It creates a feedback loop of panic. A solid, adaptable strategy gives players a safety net. It acts as a psychological buffer against pressure.
But without it?
When the strategy is visibly flawed, the players feel completely exposed. And as we've seen broken down today, when they feel exposed, the execution crumbles across all departments. England's superior planning meant their players knew exactly what their highly specific roles were.
Which gave them clarity.
Yes, that clarity allowed them to handle pressure situations flawlessly. India's lack of tactical clarity created a massive vacuum, and panic rushed in to fill it.
Okay, so we've torn the engine completely apart and found a lot of broken pieces.
Yeah.
The top order batters were paralyzed against the swinging ball, forcing the middle order into an impossible defensive survival mode.
Yep.
That severe lack of runs created a pressure cooker for the bowlers, leading to missed execution at the end of the innings and a spike in cortisol that resulted in a horrific fielding standard.
Exactly.
And overseeing all of this was a brain trust that failed to read the pitch conditions, failed to utilize their tactical reserves on the bench, and was fundamentally outplanned by a much more analytical English setup.
That is the complete, unvarnished, clinical picture of how you lose 2 consecutive international series.
So the million-dollar question for anyone invested in this team, how do they fix it? The breakdown of these matches gives us a very clear, highly urgent path forward. It demands some immediate, non-negotiable adjustments.
The prescription requires a holistic overhaul, starting with the batting approach at the top. The fear of failure in the first 6 overs has to be eradicated.
They need a new mindset.
They need to find a mechanical and psychological way to balance risk and aggression, ensuring the middle order isn't constantly walking into a blazing fire. They have to find a way to dictate terms to the opening bowlers, rather than just surviving them.
Second, they have to unlock that bench strength. Like, it is practically screaming at them that fresh, tactically appropriate talent needs to be brought in.
Absolutely.
If the current superstars aren't adapting to the conditions, open the toolbox. Give the guys on the sidelines, who might have specific skills for specific pitches, a chance to prove they can execute the strategy. Stop relying on reputation and start relying on relevant form.
And third, there must be a massive, uncompromising return to defensive fundamentals. They need to rebuild their fielding baselines and their execution of defensive bowling under extreme pressure.
Back to the basics.
They have to drill these scenarios so intensely that when the match pressure hits its peak, the players default to ingrained muscle memory, rather than defaulting to anxiety.
So what does this all mean? The ultimate lesson here is incredibly potent. Every single team, no matter how talented, loses eventually.
It's just sports.
Losing a series, even 2, isn't the actual disaster. The disaster is failing to learn from the mechanics of the defeat. If management just brushes these losses under the rug, protects the superstars, and says, oh, it's just a couple of bad weeks, then the systemic rot is only going to grow.
It will definitely get worse.
The true test of a champion organization isn't avoiding failure. It's how ruthlessly and honestly they interrogate their failures to ensure those specific structural cracks are sealed.
It is the stark difference between a fixed mindset and a growth mindset at an institutional level. And that brings up a question that I think goes far beyond the boundary ropes of a cricket stadium. It is something I want you, the listener, to really consider as you look at the organizations around you. When a highly talented, well-resourced organization fails comprehensively across the board, from the frontline workers all the way up to executive management, is the root cause usually a sudden lack of skill?
That's a great point.
Or is it an unspoken cultural resistance to adapting when the pressure is truly on? How often do we see this exact same dynamic where surface-level panic masks a deep, stubborn refusal to change a failing strategy in our own workplaces?
That is a brilliant question. Are you trying to force a strategy that clearly isn't working just because it's the way you've always done things? It makes you look at your own team, your own projects in a whole new light. Because whether you're trying to win an international sports series or launch a new product, when the system starts breaking down, you better hope you have a team willing to look under the hood and actually fix the structural cracks instead of just pretending everything is fine. Something to think about the next time you expect a symphony and hear a screeching violin.